So cats, again, dying because so many come in the door seasonally. They all hit in the summer. The good thing about adult cats is you can put them in a foster home and you don't care if they become delinquent, because it's actually better if they just hold on to them for a few months and then they show up in November and want to place the cat, because we don't have any cats then. So it's great. And cats are easy. They fit into a foster home, and people often do try to keep them longer because it's harder to get to adoption events or whatever. And for cats, we just don't care. That's okay. If the foster wants to hold on to them longer, that's fine. For kittens, it's a little different because they have a window of opportunity to get adopted when they're adorable. So our strategies: recycling, getting them back out. So our city is about 800,000 people, and we have one shelter. It used to be in the middle of town when we first got started, but the entire community was bringing all those animals to one spot. So we know people don't go out of their way to adopt cats. We know that. They can find cats on any street corner. If they're in the market to adopt a cat, the first cat they see is probably the one they're going to adopt. So they don't have to go to too much effort to go find a cat. So we tried to be that default position. We tried to be everywhere with cats. And by compartmentalizing the work, they're not all in one building. We spread them out over every PetSmart, every Petco that didn't already have a group in it. We did events on the weekends where we bring cats out in front of those stores. We set up at fairs. We did online marketing, anything that we could think of to get malls. I think there's a picture of one in the mall. And you can generally find volunteers to run cat adoption events. So again, using your resources wisely, trying to get the community engaged. It doesn't have to be a staff person that does all of this work. Open adoptions, I know that's a controversial subject, but we microchip all of our animals. We have a no exceptions return policy. We always take them back. And we're pretty open. So what that means is that we talk to people. If they put the wrong answer on our application, then we talk them through it. And we try to see, is this a real issue or is this just an ignorance issue? And most of the time it's ignorance of what we think is a really important issue for cats. So it might be that they're going to adopt a 6-week-old or 8-week-old kitten and put it outside, and they want it to be an outside cat. So we talk to them about it. We're like, no, that's not going to work. It's going to get eaten. They don't understand that. They're too little. And people generally, once you give them the information, they're generally able to digest it and make a good decision. And if the decision is not to adopt because they're not ready, or maybe you should adopt this adult cat that's already lived outside, you can direct people in a way that you still get an adoption and the live outcome out of them, but you don't put the animal at risk. So these hard screening tactics that we in the animal welfare world have used for so long, which is natural. I think it's human nature. We all do it. I've done it. I have a foster animal, and I put them through the ringer to get them adopted, but our policy is not to. And so it's a hard balance. But I think that statistically what we're seeing is people care about the pets. If they're going out of their way to adopt an animal, that means they actually care, and they want to do the right thing for that animal. Cat strategies, the other things that really work is asking people to ping their own network. So that's a network that we don't even have access to. It's not in our email list. It's not on our Facebook. These people, every single person that has an animal in their foster care, they have the ability to send one email out with a cute picture that says, I've got adorable kittens that need a home. And so that goes out to all of their friends. And more often than not, those animals get adopted through their own network, which again makes them feel better because they are responsible and they know these people. Ringworm cats, we have, that's a huge problem in Austin. We all know why it's a huge problem. We treat it with itraconazole. For the first year, we had a volunteer that donated all the itraconazole. She'd go pay in cash at the pharmacy so her husband wouldn't know what she was buying. And it's awesome, our ringworm angel. And we started checking ALTs after we had some cats with high liver values. They showed up with liver disease. We didn't check it preemptively. So now if we have to refill it at the 3-week mark, we check an ALT just to make sure that they're okay with it. Because the stress of being at the shelter, being through the whole process of being in the shelter, spayed, neutered, all of that makes it hard for them to metabolize drugs, I think anyway. Lime sulfur dips, twice a week, and then the black light. We don't do culturing yet. That's something that we want to do, but again, we're very resource limited and time limited, and so we basically anything that has hair loss that's a cat is ringworm, and and there's exceptions, obviously, but the default is if it's hair loss, we treat it as if it's ringworm so that we don't accidentally give somebody a cat with ringworm. We have some strategies to deal with it. If they're in a foster or they're in the we have a ringworm ward for them that's totally run by volunteers. And the cattery entrance checklist, they go to the vet clinic before they can be in the adoption areas. They have to go through a black light. They have to be checked from head to tail. They are, we just make sure that they've gone through a full course of the treatment, kind of just making sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's before we put them in the adoption area. And then they go into a cage, not a habitat, for the first week, just to make sure, again, that the stress doesn't cause a relapse in the ringworm. We've had some adoption events. Adopt a Fun Guy was our favorite one, and it worked. They get adopted, surprisingly, and there's two reasons why they get adopted. One is they're cheaper than normal cats, so we send them home with the medicine. Even though it costs us more money to pay for the medicine than we're getting back in an adoption fee, we still send them out with the medicine, and we do the recheck. So they don't have to go to their private vet and spend a fortune. Just like we were talking about yesterday, is that these shelter diseases kind of freak out the private practice vets. And so anything we can do to minimize drama is a good thing. And so we take responsibility for the ringworm. We'll treat it until it's gone. And it doesn't turn into a huge issue with lots and lots of complaining and doctor visits from these people. Most people are pretty self-sufficient as long as you give them the information and you give them the medicine to get the job done. We also display them. So one is they're cheaper than regular cats, and two, they're out in the open. They are accessible to the public. And we found that out. We knew that because we would do adoption events and they would get adopted. But what we found it kind of by accident that when we moved into the old city shelter, there were two cat buildings, and one was for strays and one was for adoption. So we moved our adoption cats into the adoption one, and we moved ringworm into the stray. Both of these were open to the public. And so the public would mill around. We'd have signs everywhere. But since they were accessible and viewable and cheaper, those cats got adopted faster than the other ones, especially in the winter. So we were shocked. The first month we adopted 17 ringworm cats out, and we were like, what is going on? But it's amazing. Fat cat anorexia, we take the cats after their 3-day stray hold from the shelter. We're not taking cats from the public. So a lot of these cats... if they come in fat, it may not be noticed that they haven't been eating, or they may stop eating after the second move from the shelter to us. So we put them kind of on high alert and make sure they're weighed daily, make sure that we have them in an individual cage or in a foster home so they can be observed and not fall through the cracks. Like if they were in a habitat and everybody's eating out of one dish, we wouldn't necessarily notice that they're not eating until it's too late. And then force feeding, if they've got upper respiratory, which a lot of them do, force feeding. You can prevent liver failure with just tons and tons of force feeding. And our fosters got really good at force feeding. And we did place a lot of E-tubes, too, for the ones that refuse to be force-fed. We started a feral barn cat program. The Austin Humane Society has a TNR program, and so they take the cats that come into the shelter, to the city shelter that are in a trap, and they release them back where they came from. So they do the Feral Freedom project mostly. The piece that was missing were the cats that came in where the person said, I do not under any circumstances want this cat back, and if it comes back, I'm going to hurt it. So those cats would fall through the cracks because they would be not TNR-able, and they're not handleable necessarily. So what do you do with them? They were one of the last pieces to saving all the cats. And we have a volunteer who does barn cat placement for us, and she has this amazing network ability to work through horse vets, feed barns, places where people go that have barns and property. And she's able to place about 30 a month, and it turns out that's all we needed. And so we're able to save every single cat that's feral that can't get TNR'd. And she does a whole process of interviewing them. It's an adoption, and she takes the cats herself out there and sets them up in their little acclimation building that she's built. I mean, she's amazing. So this is the actual last piece of no-kill, is the feline leukemia cats. These are the hardest to save. It's the wisest choice not to save them if anything else is out there that is savable. And so there's some things that we learned with feline leukemia over time. One is that one thing I didn't know, even though it is written in the IDEX SNAP test, is that if you get a positive, you should test with serum because the red blood cells interact with the test on a certain percentage of cats and cause a false positive. So cats that are deemed positive and only on a whole blood test may actually be negative. So doing the serum test is vital. The kittens, the other thing we found out is that kittens often seroconvert to negative. So we get a positive test, we take kittens of all ages, and almost all of our kittens become negative over time. We have a few litters that don't, but for the most part, and I don't know the statistics, I'd love to compile them, but it's definitely over 50% become negative. So putting them into foster, isolating them in some way so that they can just deal with the disease on their own time. Getting out of the shelter is good because they have less stress. We don't spay them while we're waiting to see if they can become negative. We just make sure that they've got rest and TLC and no stress, and then we retest them in 3 to 4 weeks after the initial test with serum. And for the ones that truly are positive, we don't do a lot of confirmation at the lab. We do the IDEX testing. And if somebody wants to adopt them and to confirm, then we can do more expensive testing, but we just don't have the funds to send out the IFA test on everybody. They generally, what we've seen for the ones that are testing consecutively, testing positive on their serum tests, that they live 6 months to 2 years. We've created a ward for them, for the ones that can't find foster. They do get adopted. We have about 2 a month that get adopted that are feline leukemia positive. And we market them as short-term commitments. You know, if somebody's in Austin for 2 years, this is the perfect cat for you because we'll take care of any medical that comes up that's related to feline leukemia. So recurrent infections is pretty much it. We tell them up front we're not doing blood work, we're not doing blood transfusions, we're not doing any heroic measures. But if this cat can live a healthy life for the next year or two, and you're willing to take it into your home, we'll help you. If it gets run over by a car, we're not doing that. That's your fault. It needs to go to a regular vet. But if it's related to feline leukemia, we deal with it. And again, it's not turned into a burden. It's very few visits. We're really upfront about the amount of work that we're willing to do.